of Mona Lisa, that eternal smile in her heart, a way for you just like they do, even if you never love me at all. Lamps are burning bright and the streets are vacant, just dark and light tonight, and the void is for the taking, and those letters that go unread, and all the dreams that go undreamt, I'll wait for you just like they do, even if you never love me at all. Yes, you're fading, and I know that's how we'll go. Oh, yes, I'm fading, but still, my still heart goes. Brand new day rising, just like it did. The sunlight spreading on that same locked door, so I walk into the day, knowing all that I now know. I'll wait for you just like they do, even if you never love me at all, at all. Never love me.
Kind of a system that if I'm playing in a new place, I will do one original, one traditional, and then I do, I might do something else that's traditional or falls in between those two things. I found it to be a good system to just get people into what I'm doing. But yeah, as of recent, I've been pushing more of the originals because I've been writing a lot. So
yeah, you don't have I was looking at for songs that I could use to kind of cut an intro for this podcast. Mm-hmm. And you don't have a lot recorded out there.
No, I've kind of been a procrastinator on that.
Yeah.
I've kind of hesitated. But I feel like now I'm not as hesitant. I recently did some recordings for this really cool Jack Kerouac project.
Oh yeah.
That'll be released very shortly. I'm not exactly sure when. I'm planning, I'm about to turn 25. I'm planning on releasing a 4-track EP of some recordings I did in Colorado about a year ago, and overdubbing some other instruments. And then I think after that, within 6 months, based upon what I see feedback with the EP from friends, family, and different people, I'm going to probably push an album in that direction because I have enough songs that I could be like, oh, these fit together, these fit together, these fit together.
Yeah.
And see which one I think can catch on the best.
So you're at a Lowell right now.
Yeah, I'm in Lowell.
And I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. Lowell being the Jack Kerouac city, you'd expect to be more of a jazz-based city.
Yeah.
And it has become a city of folk somehow.
It's an interesting vibe. There's definitely a lot of hardcore and punk and different rock styles.
Yeah.
Folk I think can work in Lowell, and I'm seeing more and more of a songwriter thing happening. And even with Jack too, Jack loved jazz, but he also still listened to the country blues, all that stuff. He just really, really loved music, but jazz gave him a certain type of energy. I mean, reading novels On the Road, I tell people all the time, I wasn't completely sold on the book. I liked how it made me feel overall, and then I got it. But the most exciting parts was when he was in jazz clubs or being a part of that.
Yeah,
he almost should have been a music journalist or something,
Yeah. So I've read On the Road 3 times.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to read because my personality changes drastically when I read it.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I found, I picked up the novel and I thought, this book is pretty short. It shouldn't take me too long. And I found it took me really a couple months to get through.
Really?
Yeah. And it was just I think it was the first couple chapters were so exciting. And then it just felt so mundane. And then towards the end, when I finished it, I thought about it a lot, and I was like, wow, that actually kind of makes sense. when he first goes out and does this adventurous thing, he's very excited, but then it's like he just has to do it. Like he doesn't even have a choice, and it just becomes a part of his life.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like anything that we experience in life. Like we might start something, and at first it might be really exciting, but then it's like you always look for that rush, but you might not ever get it, but you just got to do it anyways.
Right.
So I think that's my takeaway from it. But right now I'm reading, and I think you were recently reading it, Maggie Cassidy.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that one. The language in it's beautiful. It's really interesting to see him go back in time and really look at his childhood or his teenage years. But I just really love language. But yeah, On the Road was a little tough for me. But
did you see the movie?
I haven't seen the movie. No.
Oh man. Okay, so what you were just saying about like the different kinds of music that he liked.
Yeah.
On the Road, the movie has a mixed bag of a soundtrack. Like some of it is that like very frenetic jazz, like kind of what the prose in the book represents is like very frenetic writing. And the other half of the soundtrack is like this drony acoustic music.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a little bit upbeat and a little bit up pace, but like,
Yeah.
but it's like this perfect combination of music because you've got like kind of the city music. That's really what it is. It's the divide between the city music, which is all jazz, and then the like wandering through the West music, which is a lot of acoustic stuff.
Right.
You know, if he's on foot or if like there's a kind of a desert landscape or like a Colorado landscape around him, then they're playing that kind of folky acoustic music, which is nice. It's a nice little juxtaposition.
Yeah, I definitely need to check it out. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
I'm just really ignorant when it comes to film. I'm trying to get better about it, but
A lot of people didn't like that movie though.
yeah, I've heard that from a few people, but I don't want to let that opinion ruin me from seeing something that might like be kind of interesting. Like I feel like even my opinion of saying On the Road is like isn't really encouraging to read it, but I'm like, yeah, you should read it because it's just a really good book.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like that was my big takeaway.
Well, people get up in arms about adapting a book into a movie.
Yeah.
And to me, it wasn't about nailing the adaptation of the book and the way the book was written. It's about nailing the adaptation of the story.
Yeah.
And bringing a story. Like what they do is in my opinion, they perfectly represent a group of young writers during that time. Is it post-war?
Yeah, I think it's so.
I think it's barely post-war. Yeah, like a group of young writers trying to like make their own mark on the world during that time, and doing so by crossing the country a bunch of times and just being together no matter what, and working to define their own ideals.
Yeah.
And break away from the previous generation's ideals. I think that we're doing that right now, and so it's really relatable. So to me, it doesn't really matter if they got the prose translated correctly. What matters is that it's kind of a timeless story.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I mean, for me, the reason I even got into any of that was just I was, listening to Dylan and watching all these Dylan videos and what have you. And then I can't remember which movie it is, but the film where, he's with Donovan. Do you know which one that is?
With Donovan?
Yeah.
Is it a documentary movie? Or?
Yeah, it's like a documentary.
I don't know which one that is. I've seen clips of it.
Yeah. And well, that's originally was my education of it. I just saw the whole thing recently. I think it's Don't Look Back.
Okay.
But one of the excerpts, they're like sitting in a room talking about poets they like. And he was like, what about Allen Ginsberg? And I was like, oh, who's that? And I looked it up and I started getting into his stuff. And then because of him, it became full circle. And I was like, oh, I want to learn more about this guy and what people thought about him. So I found out that Jack Kerouac was his friends and he actually wrote about him in his book. And it was interesting, like you said, to kind of see into the eyes of all those writers or the perspectives and what have you. And even, like the country blues or any of my writing, a lot of it stems from just like studying what he was doing. So
yeah. What were you doing in Colorado last year?
So one of my good friends, he's a very, very good luthier, and he was working for multiple companies as a luthier in Colorado. Then he moved back to Massachusetts. He's not originally from here, but he lived here for quite some time.
Okay.
And he heard me at a club, and we became good friends, and we got to know each other. And for his birthday, he was like, hey, I built this really interesting guitar. Could you come to Colorado with me and play it? We're going to do a show. And I was like, yeah. And then he says, just to make it more enticing, like, I would like to do some demos with it. Can you do a couple of like country blues instrumental songs? And then after that, you can record whatever you want. So we just sat in the studio, and I think I cut like 15 tracks or something.
Wow.
We were just there like all day. So it was just kind of like get in, do it, and then get out. But it was a good time, and that was
Talking about Will?
Yeah,
Okay.
Will Daniels. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
real good guy. Very good luthier too.
I've
Builds
only met
beautiful
him
guitars.
once, but yeah.
Yeah.
You have a custom guitar?
Yeah, this is because I'm from Pennsylvania. I live like right next to the factory, pretty much, the Martin factory, and my guitar was a Make-A-Wish because when I was a teen, I had cancer. So it's a 0018.
You told this story at the hearing room, and I never got to ask you, what kind of cancer did you have?
It was called anaplastic large cell lymphoma.
Okay.
So during that time, I just kind of like went into my own and played a bunch of music, and I don't know, did a lot of learning, I guess. So yeah.
What was that like as a teenager?
It's kind of weird. I mean, I think it's weird for anybody at any point in their life. But as a teen, I mean, I grew up definitely not different or anything like that, but I feel like cancer was kind of the stamp of like, yeah, you're probably not ever going to be exactly like everybody else. And I mean, a lot of people go through that, but it was kind of a moment where I feel like when I was a teen, I was starting to like slowly conform to some things.
Sure.
And then once that happened, I was like, yeah, no, there's no way. So I just kind of, did my thing and retreated into it. And, it was hard because like 16 is a real big change in itself. But then, you get whacked with this thing and you're going to feel secluded. So, and I think most 16-year-olds do anyways.
Well, it's a part of your life, and you're not supposed to be thinking about mortality that much.
Yeah.
Like that's not part of a lot of teenagers' lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, there's definitely a lot of kids that go through it. So I was just one of them. So, but yeah, I mean, it was, as of now, it was probably a good thing in some way or another. I got a lot out of it. So,
yeah.
But
you're talking about conformity.
Yeah.
And I'm curious when you started kind of looking into the past and maybe outside of popular music, because you play a lot of blues stuff, a lot of roots stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up, in rural Pennsylvania, in like the coal mining area.
Yeah.
And farms and what have you. And my dad was listening to like heavy metal music from the 80s.
Really?
Yeah, he was listening to like Metallica and Pantera and Slayer. So it was all like very guitar driven music. So I just wanted to play guitar right from the get go. And then my mom, she listened to like Alanis Morissette and like Pat Benatar and stuff like that. So, I was really into that. And then my grandmother listened to like vocal jazz and like all the standards. And I just loved all that stuff growing up.
Yeah.
And I also sang in church and what have you. But as I got older, I just always was attracted to music. And my dad was like the first person that really, really introduced me to music. And he passed away when I was pretty young. So it was kind of like always my connection to him, in the beyond in a weird way. So I've kind of just always done it, and I always relied on it. Like, I remember being a kid and like being like 7 or 8 years old and not understanding things, but reading like lyrics of like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something, and like finding some type of like connection with those lyrics, or being able to like analyze them. So it kind of started from there, and then it just kept going, and it just hasn't stopped. But
is that because those were songs that he would play?
No, I think even at a young age, I started like deciding what I liked in music and what I didn't, and what emotionally worked for me and what didn't. And that album was like one of the first albums I owned. What is that album again? It's the Californication Album. Isn't that what it is?
It's called Californication.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think so.
Yeah, it is.
But anyways, I just remember opening up that booklet and reading lyrics, and for some reason, I mean, there were songs like Scar Tissue that were really nice. I liked the ballads in it. Yeah, just like the album.
It's a good album.
Yeah.
I go back to that sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to it for a very long time. I think I probably butchered it so much as a little kid, as a child, that there's certain albums that I feel like I know so well that it's just like, if you put it on, I could probably sing all the words to like the whole album, But
it's like got a lot of those kind of, I wouldn't say downer songs, but it's a moody album.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
And but there's definitely some fun songs in there too.
Sure.
Like what's that one, like something about Hollywood and Dracula, and Dum, dum, da 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 da. I'm not going to sing it because it's really inappropriate, but it's such a fun tune.
Yeah, I actually revisited a few of their albums like a few months back. The double album that they did in like 2006, Stadium Arcadium.
Yeah.
That was huge among my friend group. So I had to go back and like, it holds up.
Yeah.
It holds up. It's like a really ambitious collection of songs.
Yeah.
And again, like it's a moody collection of songs.
Yeah.
I think that's what they did very well, especially with when they had John Frusciante still.
Yeah. I feel like when it hit that point, not that I didn't like them anymore or anything, I just wasn't listening to them at the time when that was happening, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like there wasn't a lot of kids in my age group at that time listening to rock music. So, you know, a lot of kids were listening to like different styles of hip hop, which was cool and what have you, but I was listening to like Death Cab for Cutie at that time, or like Incubus, I guess. Like,
sure.
So I was listening to like a lot of stuff like that.
When does Blind Blake enter the mix for you?
Blind Blake entered the mix. You know, I'm in college. I'm listening to Bob Dylan, but I'm studying at Berkeley with like Guy Van Duzer, who taught like the Chet Atkins style, because I was really into finger style.
Yeah.
And then I started busking, and I noticed that when I was busking that people didn't really care how well I played like a Chet Atkins or Jerry Reed song, but I always caught their attention when I was singing like something in finger style, playing something. You know, I noticed that caught more attention. You know, I was studying music therapy, so when you study music therapy and you don't have a double major, you only get like 4 lessons or 4 semesters of lessons.
Okay.
And I was just kind of like, well, I want to keep studying. And I found out that Berkeley has like a roots program. They have some teachers that you can just like sign up with, and they're not like, it's not really part of the curriculum. It's kind of a weird in-between thing, but you can sign up on your own time, and the postings come up like every month. So I would just sign up every month. And Woody Mann was teaching, and Paul Rochelle and Annie Raines. They were all teaching the country blues stuff. I sat down with them, and they were introducing me to like all these country blues guys, and I was finding out like this is what Dylan was listening to. This is kind of what Dylan was chasing at first. I mean, I feel like the 2 people I was attracted to the most is Blind Blake, because I just thought his playing in time was so interesting, and Skip James.
Yeah. So it's from being a music therapy major, going to Berkeley. You're in music therapy now.
Yeah, I'm a full-time music therapist right now, so.
Yeah, and that's going well.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm working in pediatric palliative care. It's kind of the dream because I get to go and work with these like amazing kids. Yeah. And then I get home, and then I can read, study, practice, and then go out and play or go see other shows, and it doesn't really get much better than that.
What's the process like when it comes to figuring out which music you're going to use for therapy?
It's all client-based.
Okay.
So it's more of what do they want. You kind of figure that out over time. Sometimes with some of these kids, or you sometimes find out right away. So some kids like what they're hearing on the top 40. Some kids like music that their parents were listening to. Some kids like music that they never even heard before. So you kind of just flush it out. And, you know, you use your intuition, but you also use your I guess you could say like scholastic education of the sorts. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm really unfamiliar with the field.
Yeah.
Are you playing for them directly? Are you using recordings or?
So there's like, if I were to give you some examples, like if I work with a child who has, say, SMA, we might not necessarily do like a specific song. It might be more of an improvised song. So I'm just trying to get them to use their gross motor skills to keep the muscle tone and keep their bodies active.
Okay.
So it might be that I move the drum to the right side of their body, and I might use musical cues like da 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 ba da 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 da, and then they'll put their hand up to hit it because they want to hear that da, the ending note.
Okay.
So it's a lot of that, and then I'll document like, oh, they did it this many times, or how can we make it quantified to show that they're improving. And then I have like other kids that it might be more with like recording. So right now I'm working with a client who we're working on increasing self-expression, and we're doing that through lyric analysis and lyric writing. Mm-hmm. And eventually what we'd like to do is record a song that they write and that, you know, we write together. But yeah, really my job is to address life goals through music, whether that be like motor, cognition, behavioral, like increasing attention to task, things like that, emotional, and then, sometimes spiritual.
Okay.
So
they're developing brain skills through music skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
it all goes together. Music itself is one of the only things that activates the brain completely,
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting thing. And even with Alzheimer's dementia, I feel like that's where the strength of music therapy is when it comes to research.
Yeah.
Is showing that, when people's neurons are dying, that there's all these different ways we can find a new route to get to that place, and sometimes the process just takes longer to get there, but
You're able to carve new pathways, like to memory.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's just like trying to figure out. I mean, eventually, all those neurons they go away,
right?
So those pathways become more scarce, but you want to try to keep them moving as much as you can while they're still there.
Yeah,
and that's really what the music's for.
Okay.
So,
wow, what's your writing process like? Because we talked a little bit a few months back about, you had some new stuff in the works. We were really proud of it.
Yeah.
You kind of had a different process than you formerly had.
Yeah.
And
my process is always changing. It really depends on what is inspiring me at the time, too, like what I'm listening to. I think when I was a kid, I did it from a very emotional place. I just kind of was like putting stuff down. And then over time, it became more, I don't want to say technical, but more intellectually thought out, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think at first it was coming from like what's first coming to my mind and putting it down. Then I started getting into editing, and it just depends on who I'm reading and listening to and all that. But it's like a really, really tricky thing. Like I feel like, when I was in college, a lot of it was like I was writing with guitar first, and I was trying to find the words. And then I just started to become obsessed with poetry. And I took a poetry class, and then everything was just writing first and then just putting music to it, you know? And nowadays I feel like there's just moments where fire happens and it all happens at once.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes months for it to all come out. Like I have some songs that I started like 4 or 5 years ago that like still pop up in my head almost every day, but they're just not there yet.
Yeah. I think we've all got some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, the Burroughs technique where it's like just starting to piece things together. Like something that I did recently, and I came out with a few songs from it, is like doing the object rights. I really like doing that.
Okay.
And do an object right, and you find like the really cool things you like in it, or the things that are exciting, and then you circle those from like the past few, and then maybe you try to string them together. And David Bowie's done that, Cobain's done that. I'm sure Dylan's done that plenty.
Sure.
A bunch of people. So yeah, it's tricky, but it's always different. And I think as soon as it's not exciting, it's just not going to happen. There has to be something behind to be like, boom.
Yeah, the most exciting time as an artist, I always find, is when you have something new in the works and you can't wait to bounce it off people and to workshop it live and just see where you can make it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's for me like the process itself is really what I live for. Is just like that moment of like, boom, it just feels so good. And after you write something, even if it's not good or bad, whatever it is, it's just like, wow, this is cool. Like I did something, and maybe I didn't really feel proud of anything else I did today, but I can take pride in this. At least I know my brain's doing something good.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too about whether your creative output or whether your creative outlook has changed since you started doing Songwriters Night.
Yeah. That's a good question, and I don't think I've really taken time to think about it. I think with Songwriters Night, it's a night where at the Warp and Weft that I wanted to increase more ideas between people, more chances and opportunities for co-writing, and I think in some ways that's happening. It's tough. It's really cool to have people just get up there and do it, and I think that's what really inspires me at the end of the day. Like, I love when I get to go to like an event or an open mic where somebody might be like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing tonight, but I'm going to try some stuff. And I think those are really, really important moments. Like I always encourage people at Songwriters Night to just be like, hey, like if you have some new stuff that nobody's heard before, like now's the time to do it, because people are going to love you for it. This is the place to do it. And I think those are the things that excite me. But because I know after I play those songs a few times, they just become better and better and more strong. Not practicing them at home, but playing them out.
Yeah,
that's what gives my song strength, and like the emotion comes out and everything else. Because I have, you can see in the audience faces when something's happening, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely changed. I feel like these past 8 months of my life, there hasn't been a lot of time to reflect. It's been a lot of like, I gotta go and do this, gotta do this. So I'm sure those things will come up probably a little bit later where I think about it. But right now I'm not sitting back and thinking about everything. I'm kind of just like, I better do this. You know, I have this opportunity. I'm going to do that too. So,
well, it seems like you've been gratified a lot just by the musical community in Lowell.
Yeah, they're really, really encouraging and great. I mean, I started at a rough spot. Like, I was starting to play this open mic, but then I was in a kind of a stranglehold with my college career. I didn't think I was going to, like, you know, finish. There was like a mix up with like classes or something. I eventually figured it out, but at the time I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, I know I can like kind of write songs. So I just started writing all the time. And it was kind of like just writing in panic. I don't know why. It was just like what I did. I didn't know what else to do. So I was like, well, I guess it was just like, it gave me a little bit more control in a weird kind of way. Yeah. So I started doing that. And then I was playing these like, you know, 20s and 30s country blues songs out a lot and folk songs. And there used to be this club in Lowell called The Back Page. The people that hosted it now host the open mic at the Warp and Weft. But when I was there, they were just, you know, they really liked what I was doing, and they were very encouraging of it, and they wanted to make sure I kept doing it. So they started telling me, like, hey, you should try to book here, like, we can get you a gig here. And that's kind of just where it started, and I just kept showing up and playing, and, you know, it just like anything, there's, I guess you could say, like, an evolution to being in a music community. Like, you start out, like, not knowing anybody, the next thing you know, like, you know everybody, and it's a cool place to be in, and then you try to figure out how to make that circle bigger and bigger and bigger.
I'm curious if you're finding some of the things that I'm finding about transitioning to being a host rather than being solely a performer.
I don't really find that there's a lot of problems as a host. Most people are they just want to be out playing with other people and spending time together. So it's not so bad, but it definitely takes on some type of responsibility for sure. I
haven't found any problems doing it, but I've had to be careful not to put my own creative stuff on hold. And I haven't had to. I'm not saying that by any means, but like I go through like really passionate phases of projects, and so sometimes I'll just be really passionate about Woolen Mills, and I'll just be like, all right, this space is what matters right now. I'm going to spend the next month just like decorating and cleaning and make sure everything's presentable and you know, as professional as it can get there. Yeah. And that takes over my creative urge for that moment. And then once that's done, then I can kind of sit back and go like, okay, time to write a song, or okay, time to play some sets. Yeah. You know? And so it hasn't decreased my passion at all. Yeah. But it's kind of put my creative output on a bit of a different schedule. Yeah. You know, which is fine. Yeah. I think what matters more, like in a utilitarian way, is that I'm giving a stage to other people. Yeah. Where there is not a stage in town, you know? Yeah. And I think even with all of that being said, I feel like when I don't think my creative output is enough, I kind of just have to take a step back and think like, I'm still very much so doing it, like you said you do as well. And then I realize that that's just an anxiety. That's all that is. Yeah. It's not because I'm not doing it. It's just my anxious like monkey brain telling me I'm not good enough or you're not pushing enough. And then once I tell that to stop, or I accept it and just say, you know, that's just a part of you you're probably going to have to deal with a long time and you have to accept it. Sure. Then I can kind of move along and I write better songs and stuff and what have you. But yeah, it's a real struggle in that sense. And I think, you know, like you said, when you have those moments where you're busy doing other things, then somehow that thing comes about and that moment will come along. But, you know, you have to be there, but you can't force it too much. If you keep your brain occupied and keep your mind quiet, you know, because the rest of you is doing a certain task, that quieting of the mind just allows ideas to flow through. Yeah. Very streamlined, like, you know. Yeah. And I find that's very, very healthy. Whereas sitting down and trying to write deliberately can be really stressful. Yeah. I mean, I think most of my ideas for the longest time were coming from being a lifeguard and walking around a pool. Yeah. Like I was walking around a pool, scanning, making sure everything was okay. But
the same time I was humming melodies, singing songs, and then I would think like, what if so and blah de blah co-wrote a song? Like one might be like a poet and the other person might be like a painter. It didn't matter. And I thought, what if those things came together? And then sometimes like lyrics and lines would come to my head as I'm walking, and I would just repeat them over and over again. And next thing I know, like when I was on my break, I had a whole song, and it was all just internal. Some of those songs are like, they feel so natural when I sing them because they were so naturally coming out. You're totally right. Like it can be really hard to write, and when you're just sitting there, and I find that like there has to be some type of motion happening around me. Really? Yeah, I find that sometimes like the like writing in coffee shops works really well, or like writing to music. Like a lot of times if I'm listening to like impressionistic piano stuff, I'm capable of writing little things or anything. Like even those lyrics, I kind of just tune it out and just allow the motion to keep my brain moving. Because like you said, that fluidity of the brain, whether it be your body or something going on, that's when the inspiration, I guess, surfaces.
Interesting. I cannot write with people around.
Really?
No, never. Well, yeah. Okay, I write well under like 2 or 3 different circumstances, and one is pressure. Yeah. And urgency, which I think comes from being an English major and doing last-minute papers. Yeah. And the other is complete quiet. Yeah. Out in the woods, out in nature, just nobody around but me. And God forbid I see a hiker. Yeah. And then it's ruined. Yeah. It's not which can be detrimental for some reason. And the other, I would say, is like I was saying, just a quieting of the mind. You're just performing a task, outside of hiking and really thinking about it. Because if I go out in the woods, I'm going to be talking to myself, and I'm going to be just like going over lines and and focusing maybe a little bit too much. Yeah. But I don't know, some kind of project. Mm-hmm. Just doing some kind of project just helps you a lot, because you're not deliberately trying to come up with poetry, but it creates a void. It creates some kind of gap in your brain. And if you have the kind of brain that will automatically fill that gap with poetry for you, then you're very lucky.
I find that like if there's too much vacancy externally, I feel like the internal is just like vacant. I don't know. I feel like I've always like flip-flop, but I feel like a lot of my energy does come from other people. Yeah. In a lot of ways. Like even when I read books now, I'm realizing like the stuff that I'm most entertained by is by the characters. It isn't about like the more sentimental things in books, if that makes sense. Like I love Stephen King because there's so many characters. Okay. And the way he talks about his characters and the character development always is so interesting to me.
I always need like one character to focus on. Yeah. There can be a lot, but I have to really be rooting for one. Yeah. But yeah, the sentimentality is an interesting way to put it. Yeah. Because a lot of times there's things going on in a story that are so specific to like the milieu of the story. Yeah. That there's not enough character-driven motivation, character-driven action to focus on. That's kind of what I like the most about Kerouac. Yeah. Is like everything is character driven. Yeah. You understand the motivation behind everything that's happening, even though what's happening isn't deliberate. And but what matters is that he's writing about a specific generation, and you don't ever get the sense that he's crafting a character and crafting that character's motivation and trying to kind of sell you on it. Yeah. It's like 100% true, and there's something very, very intriguing about that and very captivating about that. Once you learn about a generation of people like that and what their goals were professionally and in the literary world, you are automatically just rooting for them. You know what the end is, you know how it ends, but you're like, okay, I'm on board. Yeah. Do whatever you're going to do. Even if it means, gruesome murders in the park. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think writing, it always comes in different ways, and I don't know. I think it's just one of those things that I'm just gonna do it. So I'm just gonna keep doing it, and that's kind of it. And I try not to think too much about it, but I'm always thinking about it anyway. So it's a ironic thing as much anything is. So
one more question, and I won't keep you much longer.
Okay.
And it has to do with Songwriters Night, and you were just saying that like you kind of get your energy from people.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself extroverted in that way?
Yeah, I think, I've like teetered my whole life between am I more of an introvert or an extrovert?
Yeah.
It's challenging to say. Like, this is how I've tested in the past like few years. If like, a lot of people don't believe in the Myers-Briggs very much or whatever, but I always test as INFJ, INFP, or ENFP.
Yeah.
And when I was in my late teens, I was an INFJ, like when I was like 18 or 19. When I was like 20, 21, I was an INFP. And then once I like became part of the Lowell community, I became an ENFP because I started to learn that I need to like just go up and talk to people, get to know people and all that. And I think that's always been me, but it was just challenging because of my past experiences that I just kind of went so far inward that it was really, really hard to come out due to like having cancer or any of the other things I went through as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I go inward as a form of escapism, like that's my, if that world is strong enough, I can get through anything, So I think at this point in my life, I would consider myself an extrovert because I find if I spend too much time alone, I just become way too detached, like from myself and from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it's not really like, for me personally, it's not the healthiest place to be. I think some people just do better being by themselves because they actually do get more in touch with themselves. I don't really get as in touch with myself. I get in touch with like an altered reality that can sometimes be deceiving to me,
I think a big part about being an introvert, though, is that you need to touch base with yourself. You need that time alone to just kind of process what your social life has just been. You need to retreat from whatever scene you've just been a part of. I played a New Year's gig in Fitchburg, and it was amazing, but I very much needed to go home at 1 a.m. and just, let's calm down.
I definitely need alone time.
Yeah.
There's no other way of putting it than that. Like I can't be with people all the time.
Yeah.
But I can't be alone all the time. And I'm kind of like extreme in a lot of ways, and I feel like I'm just a huge paradox. Like I'll be like, I live a life of ultimatums, which is really not good, and I'm getting better at like learning how to not do that.
What do you mean by that?
A life of ultimatums of like, I'm gonna do this, and then like I do it almost in a manic kind of way for like weeks or months or even years. And then I think it's just so easy. There's so many things in life that's binary that I find that I'm always walking on that tightrope, and I'll go a little too far to the one side or the other. So I guess it just all comes down to balance, but I'm trying to find the exact reason why I said paradox. It's like, it's funny how like you feel a certain something and you have the words and you get further into you're like, I knew what I meant, but I don't know, And I think that's like, I even find that in lyrics, like I go for like almost the most paradoxical, ironic things. I think that even like listening to like Kurt Cobain growing up, and I think I attach to that because so many of those lyrics are just like countering what he just said or like a statement, and then you realize like, did that really even mean anything? And it's like, I don't know. It doesn't even matter. Does it or doesn't it? I don't know. But yeah, I feel like I'm constantly in like a silly little paradox of like, oh, I need to be alone more. Or, no, I don't. Or like, I should be alone more. But I find as I've been able to trust myself more and get to a certain place, I don't have those anxieties as much. Because like I said, even in the other aspect of writing of like, I'm not doing this enough or I'm doing that, I've kind of learned to be like, no, it's okay. Like, life doesn't work like that.
That's a big thing socially too, because you have to be able to trust yourself to be, if you're extroverted or introverted, to be with the right kind of people. Yeah. In order to be recharged however you need to be recharged.
Yeah. I think if I lived in some places, I wouldn't be nearly as inspired as I am. I think New England's extremely inspiring.
Sure.
And that's why I don't want to leave, is there's this really cool mix of, white collar, blue collar, socioeconomic diversity, cultural diversity, that people just coming together and trying to create something bigger and better for themselves as families. And I really, really support that. And I find a lot of inspiration from that. So, I'm not from New England, but I've been very inspired by that. And I think that goes along with what you were saying a little bit.
I feel like Pennsylvania's not that far removed.
I think it depends what part you're in,
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess where I come from, it's like, it's not a bad place. And my family knows I don't have anything to begrudge it. I have songs about that place.
Yeah.
But I do find now that when I go home, like I have these big sparks of like inspiration.
Really?
But when I was there, I just felt like I needed to be inspired in some other ways. I just needed to see some other things. I think naturally I have very much itchy heels. I'm a very adventurous person. I'm most positive, and I just feel great when I get to see new places and experience new things. And even if I don't really express myself while I'm at those places, I'm just taking it in. It's just really good for me. But yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think Pennsylvania's that far removed. But I think it just depends where you are, like, in Pennsylvania, you know? I grew up with the idea of, like, the tri-state dream, which is, like, you know, you have New York City, you have Philadelphia, and you have the Jersey Shore. So you still have the Poconos where you can hike, you can go to the beach. You can also get to these major cities. And I was living at a point where people, maybe it was just me, that I didn't really go much anywhere. We went to the Jersey Shore, we went to the city, but like, I don't feel like I got to do all those things. Then I moved to New England and I felt like I was doing all those things. So, you know, it's not really the place probably. It was probably just me, and that's okay, you know. And I go back there and it's great. I have a great time. But yeah, nothing to begrudge Pennsylvania. I guess it's again like that itchy heel thing, that like living in New England, there's still so much I'm learning about it and seeing that's new.
Yeah.
Where in Pennsylvania, it was like when you see things like that you see all the time and you grow up with it, it just kind of becomes like white noise. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, so I don't like, and that's why I say like I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I know plenty of people that moved into the area that I grew up in, and are like, I absolutely love it here. They might have been from like an urban community, or they might have been from like some other part of the USA, and they absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
You know, I just was kind of like, you know, I think like most young people are like, not like most, but a lot of young people are like, I need to go see other places, and I think that's kind of where I was at.
Well, you get to the point where you see stagnation where someone else might see potential.
Yeah.
You know, and great things happen where you don't expect them to.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, where you kind of have to get away from that white noise.
Yeah.
Where what you know, if you don't see a lot of change happening around you constantly, you have to activate that change yourself.
Keep on walking and walking, talking to myself. Keep on walking and walking, talking to myself. The guy I love with somebody else. I got the hard road blues, and I'm walking on down the line. Got the hard road blues, and I'm walking on down the line. And maybe someday my gal will change her mind. It's a hard, hard road when your baby don't throw you down. It's a hard, hard road when your baby done thrown you down. I'm gonna keep on walking from town to town. It's been a long, long time since I seen my baby's face. It's been a long, long time since I seen my baby's face. And I don't see no joker standing in my place. I'm gonna find my baby. Don't say that she can't be found. Gonna find my baby. Don't say she can't be found. Gonna keep on walking till my mustache tracks to the ground.